Are you thinking about buying the cheapest shed on Amazon, or maybe you bought it already? Well, today I'm going to show you all the mistakes that I made while building this Amazon shed. If I had known these things before I built this shed, my build would have gone not just faster and smoother, but my end product would have been way better. If you watch this video to the end, you won't have regret about buying this shed. And don't worry, I won't waste your time with, put this screw here and tighten this bolt there, because the instructions are actually pretty good. But this is going to be not only mistakes, but tips and tricks that will make you much more satisfied with the end result. Are you ready? Let's jump right in. All right, so don't make this mistake that I did. And these are thin panels, okay? So you can see that's one panel, but look what I did. I doubled panels right here. Hopefully that's coming out in the camera. But there's two panels right here. And I was just putting on my last panels. Look at that. I put two together. Didn't even notice. And I needed 4 more for the back. I only had 3, and I'm digging around and looking at the other parts and spending 20 minutes trying to figure out. And then I was like, did I double up on one of these? Sure enough, I got to take it apart, pull it out. But at least they sent all the right parts. Okay, and don't make this mistake where I got on a roll and I was putting screws in the bottom of the panels and screws in the top of the panels and put all the panels together. And then I realized I had all these little nuts and bolts to put in here and here and here. So you can see, because I'm doing this by myself, I used some Gorilla Tape and taped the screws from the outside to the inside, and then went on the inside and threaded on the nuts. Okay. So this would be a lot easier with 2 people, but what you're supposed to do is put on one panel, screw it top, screw it bottom, and then put your bolt in between this panel and this panel. Then when you put this panel on, you screw it top and screw it bottom, then you can reach around and reach this and put on this bolt and this nut. So it's way easier like that. Now we'll come on the inside here. This seems to be an 11/32. Okay, I couldn't get one of my metric sockets to fit this, but this seems to fit these nuts. So let's just see if this works here. So I've my screws taped on the outside. Okay, that seemed to work okay. Hopefully I'll get away with it. Whew! Lucky. Okay, and that's running them down nicely. So like this one right here, you can see is barely threaded on. So that tape did hold it. All right, well, I redeemed myself, but that was a dumb mistake. I could have saved myself a lot of headache and some tape. Also, as you're putting one panel on, don't get excited and put all the screws in. Your end panel, your end hole in your panel, like if we put this panel on right here, that hole needs to stay open because this next overlying panel, the screw is going to go in that. So I had to take out a few screws because I got excited and put too many screws in, and then I come back with my next panel and go, oh yeah. And I try to put a screw in, but there was a screw right there, so I had to take that one out, and so that's another mistake. And another mistake to not make is don't build your shed inside your garage and the roof be too tall to get out the door. Okay, so I measured this. My door's 8 feet tall when it's open, and so there's 8 foot true feet of clearance. This is going to be less than that, so that's good. I actually learned that from April Wilkerson. If you ever watch any DIY videos, you probably come across her. So I think she lives in Texas. She's been building stuff for years, just videos or stuff, and I've learned a ton of things from her. And one of the things I watched when she was building a greenhouse one time, she built her greenhouse in her shop and then literally couldn't get out the shop door. And I was like, wow, I would have done the exact same thing. I wouldn't have thought of that. So just keep that in mind. If you're building inside, make sure you'll be able to get it outside. Okay, and because I'm a guy and I don't read directions, I didn't realize that there's this coat. I kept seeing this like weird stuff on here, kind of a weird texture. I was like, oh, that's some weird paint or something. But nope, guess what? It's a plastic film that's over all these panels, that's on all these panels that I'm gonna have to peel off, which is fine. I can do it with it mounted, but where it gets around these screws, it's gonna be a little bit of a pain that's gonna catch around the screws and make it look bad, because I'm not gonna be able to get it all out without taking the screws off. So I should have done this to begin with. This is just a little wrap just to protect the panels from each other during shipping, and they did a good job. None of the panels seem to be scratched. So I wished I would have taken these off before I mounted the doors. Okay, and as far as putting these side panels on, one of the learning experiences I had was I thought it was easier in my man mind to stand here and put the top screws in first and then just let it hang down, then go put the bottom ones in. But what happened was the panel sometimes would hang over this threshold or this little base plate right here, and then I couldn't even get the screws in at all. So what I ended up doing for most of the panels after I learned that was just put the bottom screws in first, just stand here, kind of push it against here, put the bottom screws in, and I put them all in, of course, except for the very end one that you need to overlap, right? And then you'll put that screw in after you put your next panel on. So put the bottom screws in first, and then come back to the top and put the top screws in. And they all lined up like really well. I was worried they wouldn't line up at the top, but that worked perfectly. Okay, let's come up on top here. This is something I wished I had done when I first assembled it, because it would have made it a lot easier. You know, looking at these panels, the channels overlap each other, but if there's any kind of snow load on this, pushing down on panels, it could easily open these gaps up, and that's kind of obvious on the sides where the gaps, like right here, you can push like that and it opens it. So, I could just see it getting wet inside. I just want to keep it as dry as possible. So I ended up running some, dark roofing cement along here, and basically that sealed the hole. But what would have been easier to do was when I set this panel on, get it screwed down except for, these ones right here on this edge. Go ahead and run a bead of that right down that channel. That would have been super easy. And then just set this next one in here, set this panel on there, and it would smash the bead. It would make a perfect seal. It wouldn't make a big mess on the outside like I have here where it's all irregular and smeared all around. And then go ahead and get it positioned and screw it down. So that would have just been 100 times easier.
Guys, if you currently subscribe to my channel, you already know that I'm always willing to share my mistakes, which hopefully saves you time and frustration. So if you're finding value in this video, be sure to give it a like and consider subscribing for other videos like this that we're putting out all the time. I really do appreciate you watching, and I always enjoy your comments. Now, back to more tips.
Now also, my holes did not line up for these roofing panels. I couldn't get them to line up at all. And so I don't know if I was doing something wrong or not. I ended up, just drilling where I used their screws. I just ended up drilling a small hole and then pushing these screws through it, okay? And of course they went right in easily. But I used a bunch of these 1/2 inch, I think they're number 8 1/2 inch self-tapping screws. And they just worked really, really well. And so you just put them on there, drill them in, they're self-tapping, so they just drill right through this and that metal really easily, like really fast. So, and it was way faster than drilling a hole and then putting this in. So it was just kind of one step. As far as this goes, I put a mark right here because you can't see this cross member right here. So as you're laying the panel, do them one at a time. Lay one roof panel on, get it secured up here, make sure it's square, get it secured down here. And then I made a mark here on the edge of the, whatever this part is right here. And then I just took my straight edge, my 48-inch level, and laid it across here. You could use a 24-inch because these aren't even that wide. And then put it right in the middle of the cross beam right here, and then just made some little marks, tonk, 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 and I knew right where to put my screws. And I didn't miss one. So all the screws are in nice and tight. This gives it a lot more rigidity, and it'll be a lot more soundproof in the wind as well. So a couple things: add some silicones from roofing cement, and the self-tapping screws work real easily. And also be sure to put these screws in here. And this was a little bit expensive. I'm sure plain silicone would work, but this is what I found. I was walking through Walmart, and it's roof and flashing for chimneys, joints, and shingles. It's polyurethane sealant, so it's made for roofs. No project would be complete without some kind of lighting. This is an old Harbor Freight light I've literally had sitting around for, I bet, 5 or 6 years in my garage in a box. And so I got it out a few days ago. I set it out in the sun, and it charged. It actually charged up. So, I just used some longer self-tapping screws here and here. I put some of that roofing cement right where the screws, a big bead of it, right around where the screws go through. Okay, and then where I ran the wire through, I just used a step drill bit to drill this, and it was just so much easier. It didn't like bind or try to tear the metal. This is super flimsy stuff, so you have to be careful with it. I mean, look at that. Wow, wow, wow. It's just super flimsy. But the step bit did perfect. It didn't tear a hole, drilled a perfect hole. And then I used this little grommet, and this is a Harbor Freight kit as well. So it was kind of 7/16 diameter, so I was able to drill a 7/16 hole and pop that right in, and the wire fed right through it. Fortunately, the little plug end went right through it. And then I just used some of that roofing cement just around that right there just to seal it as well, because it did leave kind of a hole. And now when we go inside, here's the light. And I have it off right now because I'm going to get this repositioned, but let's turn it on. Ding. So it's pretty bright. It'll be bright enough to see what we're doing in here. If it's daylight, obviously we have the doors open, it'll let in a lot of light, but if it's night or we're getting in here for some reason and we need that, that'll be sweet. And I couldn't get the lock to work at all. I've tried the key, it turns smoothly, but it doesn't seem to lock anything. And so this turns, that's very stationary, which it's supposed to be, because the inside nut locks this against the door. So this turns fine, but I can't get it to lock at all. So I just put a little padlock thing on there, just use some self-drilling screws there, and I had to drill this out a little bit bigger for my lock that fits in there, but fits in there nicely. So here's the base that I'm making. These are 4x4 pressure treated posts. I just cut a 45, so I can skid it around long ways. And there's a 45 cut on that end, on those ends as well. So this is 4x8 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood. Now I cut the length to 65 inches. This shed is 63 inches wide. So I'm just gonna have a little bit of overhang, which is fine, which I'd rather have a little bit of overhang than not have enough. But it's just a little tiny bit over 8 feet, just like maybe an inch or so. And this is only 4 feet wide this way. So I've got 4 feet there and 4 feet there, right? So they're all cut at 65 inches, 65 inches here and 65 inches here, but they're 4 feet wide. So this is gonna be 8 feet long. So it's gonna hang over a little bit. Okay, and here's the deck screws I'm using. They're 9 by 2.5. It does say they're pressure treated compatible right there. The other thing I'm kind of trying to do is just stagger the screws. So there's my center line, and I'm kind of alternating one on each side, just so they're not all right in one line. That'll hopefully give this like some side-to-side stability. All right, lower all the way down. This shed is not heavy by any means, but so got it all screwed down. Of course, the 4x4s run along this edge and along that edge and down the middle. So I used long screws here, right on my line, there, and then I used long screws, 2.5 inch screws all along there and all along there. So there's a bunch of them. Every 12, 18 inches or so, I don't know. And then I used the shorter screws just because they had threads further at the shank, for these shorter pieces. And that was just to kind of tie the metal down and just to keep it kind of flush with the wood. All right, good.
Nope. Actually, the shed was so light, I just towed it with my Jeep. And my Jeep didn't even notice. Okay, I've got a couple tight corners to make. I've got to turn around there and go down that way. So I think I'm going to choke this up a little bit. This is how I have it. I just drilled a 1/2 inch, that's just 1/2 inch all thread. Put a couple nuts and a couple washers there. And then this is just a strap from Murdoch's for tying down. And then this is just a short tree sling, I think is what it is, or lifting strap or something. Okay, so that's what that looks like. It'll be a little closer. I think I'll be able to pivot a little bit easier, get around corners a little bit better. All right, well, let's see how this goes.
right, so we did pretty good. It doesn't look like it came apart, at least. That's good. I thought some screws might pop out with it twisting, but we'll see how it does. Almost there, but this is going to be the hard part. So I want to get it up against the house right there, sort of. Well, friends, this actually went a lot easier than I thought it would. And I was complaining about the snow, but it actually made it a lot easier. So you saw me, we pulled it up with the Jeep. I didn't video me pushing it up here with the tractor, but I basically just pushed it up with the tractor right up here, long ways. And then I just wrapped this strap right here around one of the legs, and I just moved around by hand. So let me just show you guys how easy this is to move. In spite of all the 3/4 pressure treated lumber, these 4x4 treated posts, and the shed. I was really surprised. This thing is very light, and so I guess that's good. Once we get some weight in it, hopefully it won't blow away. But it actually moved pretty easily on the snow. Now it's all melted off, so it's not going to slide around very easy, but I do need to get it leveled. I've got a new tool for that. Let me show you what I'm going to use. We're going to need to come up a ways here. It's obviously sloping off to the right. So let's get our new fancy dancy tool. This is a construction jack is what they call it, or a hand jack. And so this basically just works. If you haven't seen these, there's a couple different brands, or there's a few different brands. Irwin makes one. The DeWalt one I like over the Irwin because you don't have to squeeze the lever up with your hand. You can actually, you're pushing this lever down, which means you can actually leave this in place and stand on this and push it with your foot and raise something up with your foot, which is pretty cool. So this is supposed to lift 300 something pounds. I don't know what it lifts. And this shed isn't super heavy, so we're going to jack it up some here. See if we can get this level. We're getting close. So this is awesome because if you're like standing here trying to hold a piece of board up and you're just trying to get it leveled, you can just step on it like that. To lower it incrementally, you push this lever and it drops it. Okay, I'm gonna have to get some bricks also to make a better support. You know, it's like 12 by 12 bricks, and to put here on the corners, just to give it some more support so it's more solid. And that way, if it does happen to shift around a little bit, it won't just come off the little foundation there. Well, friends, it only snowed a couple inches of their 5 or 6 inches they forecasted, but it got some snow on top and around the sides. For this ramp, just to show you real quick, I just screwed a board into the side right there. With several screws, and then laid this on top, and then put several 3-inch screws into here. This is going to be a good enough ramp for me going in and out. It's going to be super slick in the winter though, so let's just go inside and see what the inside looks like. So far nice and dry. You can see where some snow came in right there, and just a little bit right there, little track from between the doors, and see that gap right there? Tiny bit. Obviously the true test of this is going to be when it melts, is it going to leak? But I'm pretty confident that I got a pretty good seal along the outside here. I wish so much that I'd done this one at a time, you know, put this panel on, ran a bead of that roofing cement along here, set the next panel inside that channel, and then screwed it down and went on to the next one. And that would have definitely made a much better seal, a more reliable seal too, and guarantee that it wouldn't leak. So again, the true test will be when this melts off. I don't know, it might leak, it might not. If I do one of these in the future, I'm definitely doing that though. Also putting these extra screws in right here along this support right here. And a lot of these here are self-tapping screws. There's a self-tapping screw right there. And there's one of their little screws. And so they bite enough, you know, but the self-tapping screws just go in so much easier. And I didn't have to pre-drill these holes like we talked about earlier, so that was nice. So this makes it stronger. The other thing about siliconing these edges, and you know, I haven't siliconed the edges here though. You can literally push this apart and see daylight. So I wished I'd siliconed these when I put these in as well. It would have been just so much easier to put one panel up, run a bead of silicone down it, put the next panel in place, smash that silicone. It would make a nice seal. It would tighten it up because it would firm it up as well. So I think the only extra things I would buy when I'm doing this project again is some number 8 1/2 inch self-tapping screws. I actually used some longer ones as well, like 3/4 inchers, just to make sure I got good bite in a couple places because I had a lot of metal to go through. So maybe a box of those as well, but also silicone and then roofing cement. And that's an extra expense that they don't really talk about. But here in Montana, where we're going to get snow and it's going to melt, snow melt, snow melt, snow melt, rain, rain, rain in the summer. So yeah, I definitely want it weather resistant just because my floor is going to last longer. I do want things that I put in here to stay dry. I don't want things like dripping on them and water running on them. So those are two things that I definitely keep in mind. This probably took me 9-10 hours total, but that was with painting, doing the floor, the deck, all that stuff. If you're doing a concrete foundation, of course, that's going to take more time. Knowing what I know now and what I would do different would really speed things up. And how this goes together, like buying a bunch of these number 8 by 1/2 inch self-tapping screws, because you just literally put your screw gun on, drive it in, it screws through the metal, tightens everything up. You can see I use several to try to just reinforce. Instead of just using a couple screws like here and there like they wanted you to, I put in several just to reinforce and try to make it stronger. So that screw wasn't a hole, and you can see I put several screws in here to tie in this cross member. Screws here. On the inside here you can see where I put screws as well. Let's tip this up. So here's their screw and their screw. They just had 2 little screws right here, you know, that just, oh, they're little bolts there. But I used backup screws, the self-tapping screws. I used one there. I used several along here just because this was super flimsy and seemed to be kind of super wiggly. You could still spray it apart. So I used several along here. Several there. I used several along here because this is what attaches the whole roof. The whole roof attaches to the top frame with these little gold screws, and I just don't think that's very strong at all. So I put a whole bunch of self-tapping screws along here. This is another place I wish I'd silicone before I put the roof on. I wish I'd ran a bead of silicone around here, had 2 people. This roof's super light, by the way. And then, or at least when you put the roof on, it's not the whole roof, it's this piece and these ends. So these cross members in these ends. I wish I'd put a bead of silicone right here and then just set it down on top of it and then screwed it down. That would have made a nice seal all the way around. There wouldn't be any chance of water intrusion, but you can still see where there's a gap, like right there. These gaps here between their screws were pretty big, you know, because this is not rigid metal at all, and it would flex and bend, and so there's a pretty big gaps here and there, and that's another reason I put in several of these self-tapping screws. And you want to do that before you put your roofing panel on, because once you put your roofing panel on, you can't put a lot of these screws here because you just can't get your screw gun up here up above. So make sure to tie this in before you put your roofing panels on. All right, well, it snowed a couple times since we've put this in place, and the snow melts off and collects and melts off. So let's get in here. And honestly, I'm not sad that this lock didn't work, because I feel so much more secure with the padlock anyway. So I put a little combination padlock on here. Okay. And that just feels a little more secure, I guess. So let's look inside and see what it looks like. You know, whoa, that is a slick ramp. I don't see any water. Let's turn the light on here. Oh, it's been cloudy for a few days and the light's not very bright. All right, well, just looking around, you know, it looks nice and dry. So that's good. These top little cross members here look dry. I don't see any water that's leaked in and frozen. I don't see any icicles, because that would be the case if it melted and then refroze. I don't see any icicles at all. All right, so far so good. Also got some bricks here, and have bricks in several places, keeping it level, keeping it supported. So it feels nice and solid now, and even if it does try to shift around, it's not going to go anywhere. I've got a big propane cylinder in here that we're just storing in here. The generator we're just storing in here, so it's close to the house, so when we need it, we can use it. My wife's going to be putting some yard tools and stuff in here as well, so it's going to have some weight in it. It should be nice and secure. So I guess the next question is, would I do this again? And with the knowledge that I have now, I'd say absolutely. So I hope this video helped you guys, and I appreciate you watching. And oh, by the way, if you do this shed, if you build this shed and you learn some things, please let us know in the comments what you learned or what you did different or what worked better for you. I'd love to hear your feedback. All right, I appreciate you watching again, and I don't know what this deer thinks he's doing over here. What are you doing? Are you looking for something to eat? I don't have any food for you. I'm sorry. You're after the chicken food, aren't you? Or the bird seed. That's what you're after. I knew it. All right, well, again, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.